Good. Okay. Well, I'm here at Lindendale near Alstonville with Ross Arnett, who's a macadamia grower in this area, and he's doing some really interesting things in his interrows. Firstly, as you can see in the distance there, he's growing interrow different species through his interrows, but he's also doing lots of interesting things underneath the tree line. So I'm interested to hear, Ross, how all this evolved. How did this happen?
Okay, probably first off, Richard, it was actually stop mowing when you don't need to mow. It's amazing what new varieties come up. These were originally cow paddocks 40 years ago, so it would have been all kikuyu and paspalum, and now you can see there's a whole lot of broadleaf carpet grass, Dichondra, which was probably here, or some that I'd planted, and also the sedges, the basket grass.
Let's just walk along and maybe we can have a look at some of this while we're talking.
Yep.
So there's quite a mix here, isn't there? And the Dichondra, how did you come across that?
Back before I was doing macadamias, I had a bit of a play with doing bush foods, and that was one of the species we put in as just in the interrow and around where we're doing the bush foods. It grows quite well in fairly low light, and it's a kind of a bit of a no-mow surface. You rarely need to mow it, and it just works very well. So I've bought seed over time and just dribble a little bit out. It's a hard seed, so it will just sit there, and when the conditions are right, it'll germinate and off it goes. And it slowly spreads out across the orchard floor. And I'm aiming to plant it mainly in around the trees, so where the sweeper goes on the harvester, because the harvester sweeper will move a lot of soil. So being such a low growing and flat surface to it, it's just ideal to sweep nut out from around the base of the trees.
So it's growing up, got a bit of grass in amongst it. Do you think the Dichondra will eventually sort of dominate the grass, or will this keep being a mix?
I think it'll keep doing a mix, which really excites me, that it doesn't become dominant. Other things will just pick their time and they'll grow up through it.
So this seed has just been broadcast and not planted with a drill or anything?
No, I my little Azedo electric seeder?
Yeah.
I kind of worked out a rough seeding rate and drove along with the gator and held it out to the side as we drove by.
And this is interesting, this very low growing sedge here, a very sort of almost miniature sedge. I can see patches that are, all over the place here. And I imagine that'd be quite good to pick up nut off as well.
Oh yeah, it's been quite good. It's kind of grown over time. There's more patches of it throughout the orchard. I assume the harvester picks up bits of seed and deposits elsewhere, like many of the other species, and it's good.
It doesn't seem to mind the shade either.
No, it'll grow in quite low light conditions.
Yeah. So you've got several different species here that are all pretty good in low light conditions.
That's right.
But I noticed there's no smothergrass on this farm. What's the story behind that?
Look, I haven't bothered to plant smothergrass. I suppose it was always seen as something you planted as a last resort if you had too much canopy and you weren't getting enough light in the orchard. It also tends to, my observation of other farms, dominate, that it becomes a bit like a second monoculture. You have your trees and then you have this vast array of just smothergrass with nothing else, and I suppose the name explains that. It just kind of smothers out everything else, and it can be, from my understanding from other growers, it's difficult to harvest out of sometimes. So
I guess it's got its role to play in certain circumstances anyway, and it's been very useful in the industry. But what we're trying to do here, or what Ross is trying to do here, is actually have more diversity rather than less diversity, which is what you tend to get if you're growing smothergrass.
That's right.
Okay, Ross, that sounds really interesting, that what you're doing here. But I realise that one of the reasons you can do that is because you've got a flat orchard. You don't have irrigation lines running through here, and you don't have mounds. So I guess that's effectively enabled you to manage it like this.
Yeah, that's right, Richard. It is a relatively flat orchard, particularly to some farms out Dunoon Way. Being flat, I also didn't, some farms mound, but I decided not to. That my aim was to try and do good canopy management where I could get a lot of light through and kind of get the maximum amount of ground cover I could get. That certainly makes it much easier to mow when you need to mow, and also picking up nut. And also, if you've got heavy rain and you've got that ground cover, it tends to flow across the whole orchard floor, which probably was like when it was cow paddocks, there was no erosion, that was just
That's right. You don't have drains that can end up becoming streams. And
that's right.
And you do have deep, well-drained soil here anyway.
That's right.
Yeah. So that enables you to
it has
do
a lot of advantages that work in my favour.
Yeah.
And that canopy management time means less ground cover management time. If you've got those open trees and you can get that sun through to the ground, you've got grass growing up to the butts of your trees, and you have less erosion issues then, and it's much easier to manage.
Yep. What we call a living ground cover.
That's right.